So here we are at the first lunar eclipse of 2025, and it's going to be happening at 23 degrees Virgo. Overall, this eclipse looks to be a tad bit intense energy, and it may amp up emotional energy, expectation, and a lot of things that have been going on. We have a lot of the Gate 36 involved in this lunar eclipse, but also we have the full 35-36 channel, which can sometimes bring some balance. But I think that when you have quite a bit of abstract energy, we know that there is going to be a lot of expectation that is wrapped around this eclipse and also the eclipse that we have at the end of the month. And so that is the big key, to let go as much as possible and let the universe show you what it's going to show you, instead of expecting a certain thing to happen and then it not happening the way you want it to happen, or sometimes it can happen better than you expect it to happen. And so again, this is always going to be on both sides of the spectrum, where you think bad things are going to happen or you think good things are going to happen. So if you can find yourself in the center of keeping expectations as low as possible, that can serve you well. The other perspective is in everything that we have that is going to happen with the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse coming on later on in the month. The bottom line is that there's always going to be some light or some thread that kind of carries us through the energy with ease. And for this lunar eclipse, the light that we have to sort of guide us along the path of the month and for this eclipse and going forward is Pluto in gate 41, line 2. And I mentioned this for the overview for March, but ultimately I think it's a message that is worth repeating. And this is about the idea of looking at life as what can I do as opposed to what can't I do, and seeing the world kind of doing the world things, and maybe a lot of disruption, a lot of things kind of going askew, and feeling very helpless and hopeless and those types of things, and instead looking at the world as having its own power drivers that are going to do what they're going to do, and we have very little choice in what they're going to do, but we do have a choice to work in our own communities with our own lives. And taking the focus away from the worldview, potentially maybe looking at less media if possible, because that can become quite overwhelming after a while. And looking at what are the improvements or the things that you can actually make in your own life. And really an emphasis on doing things that make you feel good, that you like doing, that make you feel alive, that make you remember the beauty of the world and remember the beauty of being alive. The world that we live in is not only about one person and they're the only person that makes the decisions for the world. It might look like that, but every single person has a destiny, they have a path, they have a trajectory, and everybody makes a difference and everybody matters. And how that happens in your life is always going to be different than anybody else's. And finding your path to make you feel good will be very helpful for this lunar eclipse. It is a very emotionally charged lunar eclipse. We do have the 35-36 channel activated as it's been for a long time. We also have gate 22 that's active too, because we have global activation of the solar plexus, as well as gate 6. So we're taking all this emotional energy. Gate 22, where Saturn is, has got melancholy and it's got that type of energy, but a lot of creativity as well. And that is there. Plus, we also have 35-36, which is expectation. Is it going to be what I want it to be? Am I going to get what I want? And if I don't feel I'm getting what I want, then it's easy to go into melancholy. And gate 6 is about the emotional attachment to being supported, to wondering if you're going to be supported, to wondering if things are going to work out. It brings a real tribal view to it. These are the types of things that you might see people saying, people talking about. The sun in gate 36 line 2 is called support. It's the gate we hit before we hit gate 36 line 3, and this is where it says basically we're moving into new energy and we're changing. But this is where you get to the point where you understand that no matter how much things are looking as though they're getting less and less, and no matter how much Pluto's changing the trajectory, no matter how much things are looking as though they're just taking everything away with one final sweep, because gate 41 is about decrease, and things are being removed to have more growth. It basically says that the rule of cycles, in which decline is natural but not an enduring stage. And so what it says is that what goes down must come up. And if things are going down and things are being removed, and if you keep pruning away at that one tree, eventually you get to a point where that's it. There's no more to prune. And now the tree has an opportunity to start to grow again. And this is where we're coming to that point at which the cycle is saying, okay, now we're going to eventually stop. So we're not hitting the third line, the gate 36 line 3. Instead, we're still in this point where we're potentially having the things get removed, but we also know that this is not a thing that's going to last forever. And so this is giving the hope to say, this is not going to last forever. Things will change. Continue to believe that there is something more, because there always is. We know that. And this is what this lunar eclipse is saying. And any lunar eclipse that we have is basically a full moon. And it is really reminding us that there are things in our lives that we need to let go of. And with Pluto and Gate 41 line 2, this is really letting go of something that no longer serves you. What doesn't serve you anymore? What is in your life that you know that has an expiration date? It has expired maybe a long time ago and you no longer need it, or you no longer have value out of it, but you're kind of holding on to it because you're worried that what if I let go of this? What happens then? Well, what happens then is you get an opportunity for something new to show up, because they always say when one cycle ends, a new one begins. And this is what we're saying. Every cycle has its time. And when it's over, something new comes in. There's never this point at which everything stops and we never have new movement or new cycles or new anything. And with Mars connecting to gate 42 and having that full cyclical channel activated, it means that we're in a time of a lot of new cycles being birthed. And if you're planning those cycles in a way where you are looking at it from the best possible way that you can make a cycle begin, and this will happen right until the 21st or 22nd of March. That's what it's opening up the door for. But this energy is saying we're at the end of something and now we need to move into something new. And keep in mind that this spot where we're having this eclipse is kind of a hot spot, because back in April 14th, 2022, we had Jupiter and Neptune conjunct or connect in gate 36 line 2. So it's basically bringing that time back into frame and saying, did you start a new cycle then? And if you did, is there something that you need to let go of? Is it an end of a cycle? Or you can always say that every ending of a cycle, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to let go of something completely, because maybe it's still part of your life, but you're going to upgrade it. You're going to step up and you're going to have an upgraded type of energy and a new cycle based on an old cycle. So, for instance, maybe you're dating somebody for a long time, and then, you say, okay, we've come to the point at which, we either have to move forward with our lives together or we need to, separate. And maybe you decide that you want to get married, or maybe live together or something like that. Well, now this is where you're still in the same theme, but your cycle has upgraded or it has shifted in a different perspective. And now you're looking at a life together as opposed to something that may have been, just kind of casual and you weren't really sure how it was going to go. And so this is what it could be. It could be an upgrading of a cycle that has maybe started back in April 2022. And this is also giving us the concept of, with every new experience with Gate 36 in play for much of 2025, it's all giving us this perspective of we're being thrust into experiences that we have no experience with. That is the whole point of why it's called chaos or crisis, because when you are thrown into an experience that you've never done before, it's going to be a little stressful. It's going to be a little, wow, what's happening here? But then as you get more experience, then that is when things sort of seem to smooth out and get a little easier. And this lunar eclipse is saying, yeah, you have been put in an experience that you never had before. The world is completely different now than it has been in a very long time. And I think a lot of us are living in a different world where we haven't seen anything like this in our lifetimes. This is an acknowledgement. Yes, this is absolutely what you think it is. A huge shifting energy that is changing everything that we have sort of counted on for how long. It is scary and it is disconcerting, and you wonder day by day how it's going to play out. But ultimately, that's what this is saying, is that everything has a season. And just because it looks like this doesn't mean it will always look like this. And there is new growth coming in the future. You may not see it right now, but it is going to be there at some point. And so, basically it's saying keep on keeping on until things start to shift. And you will know when they're starting to shift. And for some people, it'll be very soon that things will start to shift. And some people, it will take a little bit longer. But we will all see cycles beginning and cycles ending, because this is a very, very, I would say a very karmic time for a lot of us, for the world in general. Is a very karmic time where things are completely shifting and changing. And it's going to bring things in that we've never had before. And this is part of, if we're looking at even the 2027 mutation, this is all sort of stuff that Ra Uru talked about. He talked about all the things that were going to change, and this is part of it. And we know that change is never easy. It is just one of those things. You're just in the middle of it, and it's so messy, and there's so many, almost like flying objects everywhere. And then suddenly it just gets quiet. And then you start to, pick up all the things and you start to say, okay, what do I have now? And how can I use it going forward in my future? And it's not just that the sun is in gate 36. We also have the North Node in gate 3696, which is in exaltation because Jupiter is in the energy as well. And so this is basically the thing that I've said a lot. It's the key phrase is the knowledge and attendant faith that the powers of darkness eventually destroy themselves. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. The correctness of crisis when it arises out of pure feelings. And so this is basically saying that, no matter what's happening, eventually it changes. Eventually everything shifts. And that's where we can, wait for that moment to happen. Until that happens, though, we live our lives, we do what we can in the moment, and we continue on. That's all we can do. There's no other choice. And with Mercury in gate 21, line 1, this is bringing a tribal theme, and this is really bringing this concept of control. And so, from a global perspective, if we want to move into the global perspective, I look at Mercury in gate 21, line 1. I look at this as being controlling of the communication, controlling of the messaging that we're getting. So, this is really a time to be discerning about what you read, what you hear, and because it may not be what you think it is. And I mentioned this for the overview, but I think it's worth repeating. It's this concept of sometimes people will give you information or you'll read an article or something like that, and it sounds like it's very reputable. And then, they might even believe what they're telling you, which is even more difficult for you to not, take it in a way as it being true, but it may not be true at all, or maybe it's just a little bit true. So this is where back checking, fact checking, and all those types of things, because misinformation, we have Mercury going into retrograde within a couple days. Misinformation is always going to be something that is potential, especially when we have so much AI out there. AI is definitely feeding into misinformation. I mean, there's a lot of these videos of people who are not, it's not the real people. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what it can do in the misinformation stratosphere. And again, controlling the collective with these certain narratives. Then we look at Venus in gate 17, line 5, and this is called No Human is an Island. And so if you look at No Human is an Island, what this is really saying is that we're all in this world together and we all need each other. And even though you might say that you don't need this person and you don't need that, or you don't need this country or you don't need that country. That's not necessarily true. We're all intricately interwoven in the tapestry of life. And with all the global partnerships that have been built up with the cross of planning, disentangling yourself from that web, you could say, is going to be not as easy as you might expect. Again, we have the unfounded expectations of the 3536 channel, oh, it will be like this, it'll be easy as can be. But no, that's not necessarily true. And this is where there's a realization that even though I feel like I have all the power to do whatever I want to be on my own, I'm actually not able to do that after all. The way we have set up the world, there is no place that we can just, again, disentangle in a couple months and go on our merry way on our own. We're all in this world together. And even as we move into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, that theme continues that we all need each other. We may need each other in a different way. The way the cross of planning is set up, it's like everybody who's in our tribe deserves to have the space to be cared for, to be supported. Now that's breaking down. Unfortunately, it is one of those types of things that goes with the cross of planning, where all the people that didn't have this or didn't have that, they were given support. And now it's like, no, everybody has to take care of themselves. But that doesn't mean that we don't have any kind of community anymore. So this is the messaging that it's bringing. And we may not like that messaging, and we may not like that trend, or we may not like that things are changing that way, but that is sort of what we see happening. And this is kind of completely aligning with the whole concept of the cross of planning fading away, especially with Venus in gate 17, line 5. This is talking about the world economy. This is talking about all the clicking into place of all the pieces of all the global economies. And that if one suffers, the rest suffer. And that's the way it is right now. And eventually that may all change. Things may start to decouple, and it's already starting to happen in a lot of ways. But right now, it's talking about that perspective. And so if you have no diplomacy, or you have no kind of let's get along to get along kind of concept, well, things are going to get a little bit dodgy. This is especially true with Mercury in gate 21, because this is talking about Mercury can be connected to the stock market and those types of things. And so what this is saying is that it's called warning. In other words, this is like where somebody says, okay, if you keep messing with us, if you keep messing with us, we're going to have to come back. We're going to have to bring some force here, because you can't just come in and control the whole narrative. You can't come in and control everything. And so there's kind of a power struggle for, who is trying to take power away from other people, and who is saying, no, you can't have it. That is actually mine. I've earned that power. This is mine. And so that can happen in the stock market. It can happen in the world economy and all those types of things. So these are things that we might see happen, sort of going forward after this lunar eclipse. A full moon is like a culmination. It's like an explosive burst of energy that says, okay, all this goes away. We don't need this anymore, or it brings everything to a head, and there's nothing more to do other than to deal with what has been brought to a head. And lastly, with Pluto and gate 41 line 2, from a global perspective, we look at this as moving away from gate 41 line 1, where Pluto sort of has only been, as a new cycle. It began in 2024, and now it's moving into this new line, which again, it hasn't been in a while. Now, this new line is different. We can never look at one gate as being on its own, especially not with the slow moving planets, especially not with Pluto. But what I'm talking about is, if you have Pluto in gate 41 line 1, and it's been there for a while, and now we're moving into gate 41 line 2, well, we're moving away from the 31 line 1, which is the opposition. The gate 31 as an entity is a leadership style. And so 31 line 1 is the authoritarian leadership style. And so we could say, well, the authoritarian leadership style has been the thing. It's been the thing where we're sort of moving, and people are kind of leaning into that real authoritarian energy, and the dictatorship and those types of things that have sort of arisen with Uranus going through Taurus. And now we're looking at moving into 41 line 2 and 31 line 2, and this is the democratic or democracy type of energy, where it is a leader who is there, but really they're listening to the people, and they're basically saying, I don't really want to do this, but if you really make me do it, I'll do it for you. But really, it's your choice of what you want me to do, and what you want me to change and shift, and those kinds of things. And so we're moving into this being called out to leadership. We're all being called out to leadership, but it is also this idea that people are saying, okay, no more of this authoritarian, reverie, where we think that, oh, that's the only way to lead a country. That's the only way to lead anything. You have to be an authoritarian energy, because we know the authoritarian energy is actually a beneficial energy, in that it can be an expert in its field, but it can always digress into something different. And so this is saying we're tired with this dictatorship or dictatorial energy, and now we want to have a say. Now we're calling out leaders to actually lead in a way we want them to lead. And when we have a democratic leader, the leader is elected. The leader is, they're only as strong as the people that support them. And that is really what we're talking about. Now you could look at, for instance, a first line leader as being a tribal leader, where you're basically telling them what's going to happen, and you say you're going to support them, and so you basically support me, and I'll make sure you're taken care of as well. Now we're moving into gate 31 line 2, which says, I need you to tell me what you want. And if I'm not acting in a way where I'm actually listening to you, well, I'm going to be called out. And this is where we might see people starting to call out their leaders and saying, no, this kind of leadership doesn't work for us anymore. Now, this is a new concept that's going to be in play until July 2025. And so this could be sort of the push that we see, people looking for something different. Pluto will retrograde into gate 41 line 1, and also back into gate 60 line 6, and it'll eventually leave gate 41 line 1 in January, early January. And so then it's going to go into 41 line 2, and really I would say that would be the second wave of no more dictatorial energy. We want something different. And keep in mind, as of January 7th, 2026, that's it for gate 41 line 1. Pluto will be done with that energy. And so we might see a lot of shifts in the collective and how the leadership is being led, number one. And number two, that we will see as a collective that the dictatorial energy might actually start to fade away, but we will see what happens. So that's what I see for the lunar eclipse. I hope you have an inspired lunar eclipse filled with lots of beauty. And until next time, take care and bye for now.